I'm going to be going over what makes a successful supply and demand zone in our eyes, right? What is the criteria required for a supply and demand zone to be valid? And in this video, we hope that you'll be leaving with exactly the understanding of whether your supply and demand zones are valid. And hopefully this will give you some insight into why maybe some of your supply and demand zones have been failing. So guys, without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. Supply and demand zones have a very specific criteria in order for me personally to take them, right? There are levels of supply and demand all over the market, like first and foremost, levels of supply and demand exist everywhere. So how do you really decipher which one is for you? Well, for me, the first criteria is that it has to take a level of liquidity, or the area of price in which it came from has to take an area of liquidity. So what does that look like, right? Well, there has to be some form of liquidity that zone takes, right? Because we use the level of demand zone in this example, and it can just be reversed and flipped on its head for supply zone, but it has to take a level of liquidity. So in this example, as we can see right here, we have this wick right here, which is a sell to buy. I'm going to make another video on what wicks really represent and go a bit more in depth into that, and why sometimes we use wicks as demand and supply zones. But here we can see we have built up liquidity, built up mitigations, minute trend line internally, and then you can see we have a very aggressive move to the downside with this wick, and then a very aggressive reaction back out, which essentially just cleared out levels of liquidity. If there was a trend line forming, that anyone who was attempting to buy in here would have been taken out. So criteria number one is that it has to take liquidity, or if it didn't take liquidity, because not every single zone does take liquidity, if it didn't take liquidity, then that means there would have to be a level of liquidity to take, right? There would have to be liquidity before the zone to take, right? Vitally important that there is some level of liquidity involved, because for the most part, if you haven't identified the liquidity, you probably are the liquidity, and sometimes that can be in the form of inducement. So a zone has to have large volume. Liquidity is number one. Second of all, it has to have large volume. This is a clear indication to me that banks are getting involved in the market because there is a buying pressure or a selling pressure in a supply example that is significant, right? And it's purposeful, it's intent, it's driven. It has to have a large amount of volume. So if we're using this POI, just to be clear, I am talking about this wick right here as our sell to buy, because if you do go onto a lower time frame, you'll see that on the 5 minute, just refined, it is more of a clear quote unquote demand zone that of course has the sell to buy engulfed, very important, and you can see more clear the built up liquidity that was taken, the sell off into the liquidity pool, and then the continuation. So number two is that it has to have large volume, and as we can very much see that this zone right here has a large takeoff, right? There's a lot of capital injection that comes into the market when this forms. That's number two. Number three, it has to break structure or change character, right? It has to be responsible for doing something. There has to be an intent behind it. So in this example right here, we can very clearly see that on the 15 minute, this zone right here has changed character, right? It's caused a change of character from supply and control to demand and control. It's also broke internal structure. So it has to do something significant. There has to be an intention for it, a reason as to why. That's number 4. Number 5, there must be liquidity to target, right? There must be areas of liquidity that you are looking to take the trade to. Right here, for me, we have built up liquidity in at this high, right? Liquidity. There has to be liquidity to target. And then finally, number 5, it has to be well priced, which means that by the time price gets there, it has to be priced in and around discount for a demand zone, or if it's premium, then it's going to be a supply zone. So it has to be well priced, which simply means that it has to be coming from a level of premium or discount. Again, I will make a specific video on how properly to use premium and discount in another episode. But right now, number 5, it has to be well priced. So let's recap. Number 1, it has to take a level of liquidity. Number 2, it has to have large volume. Number 3, it has to change something or break something. Number 4, there has to be liquidity to target. Number 5, it has to be well priced within premium or discount. And that is exactly how I select a good zone, right? Where a zone is valid or not. That's because from my perspective, I'm understanding that that's an area of price in which the banks are likely to be involved. Also, this is a very, very important point. The level of supply or demand has to be in alignment with the trend or the order flow. There's no point trying to long if the price should be going short. So my take profit 1 would be here, take profit 2 is going to be up here. You have to be in alignment with the order flow, right? It's the where are the banks intending to take price as your bonus. And there are no accidents, right? There are no coincidences in this market. Everything is perfectly done through cause and effect. So when you see something as aggressive as that, and then directly to take profit, and this is live in the market right now. There are no such things as accidents, right? Everything is intentionally designed by default, more than likely programmed algorithmically, to do exactly what it is that it needs to do. So guys, that is essentially our criteria of what makes a solid demand zone. All of it from A to C. Thank you guys for joining. If you did enjoy the video, please don't forget to hit that like button. It helps us reach more people. Hit that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with our posts. We are consistently posting pretty much every day with a large amount of volume. And if you want access to some of our free resources, like our weekly analysis, multiple